Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your sun in Aquarius and Cancer rising. This is known as an inconjunction in astrology, and I have this myself, although it's with different signs. My sun is in Sagittarius and my rising sign is Taurus. And it will not always be the case that when you have these your two signs that it's going to automatically be in conjunction. It would have to be within a certain degree span. The best thing to do is to go to a website that has the that lists the different aspects. I use astro.com. Of course, you can always get a private reading with me too, and we can look at it from that perspective, because an inconjunction is when two planets, or in this case points, are 150 degrees apart, and it's considered an awkward angle. The 2 points, the signs that the 2 points are in, have nothing in common with one another. And as I have said in other videos that featured inconjunctions, I always try to find common ground, because I don't believe that there are ever 2 signs that are completely incompatible with one another. So whether that has to do with somebody that possesses both of those signs in their personal points, or if you're talking about couples or anything like that. But this is a stretch, because Cancer is a cardinal water sign and rules the 4th house of home and family. So it's totally associated with domestic affairs. And then you have, and it's also the sign of the mother. Aquarius rules the 11th house. It's a fixed air sign. So we're talking about water and air, which are totally different. And Aquarius rules the 11th house, which is the house of the collective. So it's kind of like an impersonal house. And the 4th house is a personal house. So these 2 signs are very different because of that. The one thing I think that they do have in common is a humanitarian bent. The 11th house, or Aquarius, is because it is concerned with the collective, does tend to be interested in human rights. And Cancer is a nurturing sign and wants to care for people. So with this combination, one of the reasons that's so bizarre is because Aquarius is a very rebellious sign and very much interested in being a nonconformist. Then you have Cancer, which is a traditional sign, and you can have something that is totally contradictory. Now, I was thinking of the person. This is kind of funny, because I was thinking, how would this play out in terms of how the person dressed, which could be the rising sign? I watched this video, and I'm sure some of you have seen this type of video where there's like a woman who is dressed like she's from the 40s or she's from Victorian age, and she lives her life like that. And it's probably kind of gimmicky, but I saw this one lady, and I think she was dressed like the 40s or the 50s, and she lives like that all the time or something, which is, you could say that's kind of strange. I mean, it's cool, but it's strange. And, that's the kind of thing that Aquarius, I could see, you doing, maybe not to that extreme, but doing something where you're ultra, I was going to say conservative, but it's really not about being conservative, but old-fashioned. Conservative, when you use terms like conservative, it sounds like a political persuasion, and I'm talking more about the way that the person dresses, the way that they live. So here's an example. I could see this combination being somebody who would homeschool their children and actually, be apart from the system as a whole. So it might be something where you fantasize about being off grid, being, out of the system. And if you have children, teaching your children yourself so they're not indoctrinated into the matrix, which you may feel like, oh, this society is just this one giant matrix and it's trying to get its hold on us psychologically, and I'm my own person and they're not going to get to me. No, sorry, Bob. I'm going to be my own person. And if you have kids, which you may very well, when you have Cancer rising, then you may do this. Now let's look at how these two signs can, I want to use the word clash, but I try to reserve that for squares or even oppositions. Really, the square is the one that I think of. With the inconjunctions, I visualize a vision appear to me of like two pieces of a puzzle that are side by side and they do not lock in together. But how would that play out in terms of how the person, lives life? Well, when we look at the rising sign, we're going to see the person's appearance. One thing that is true, not only for Cancer rising, but it can be true of any kind of prominent Cancer. And this is true for any sign that I have observed, is that you may see qualities in the appearance that are, it's not, everybody says, oh, the rising sign is the body, so that's how the person will look. And that could be 100% true, but there's going to be, I do believe there are influences from the sun and even the moon in terms of how the person may look. And because I'm speaking of women, I'm just going to speak of women, not only because there are a lot more women that are going to hear this than men, but also because I am a woman. I can't really talk about men's clothing that much, even though I wear it sometimes myself. But I mean, men kind of have boring clothing, just pants and jeans, but women have more variety and they can wear dress as well. It's 2024, so even that is out the window, but I just want to keep it uncomplicated here. So the thing is that a woman that is a Cancer rising, she may have a rather full face, a round face, a moon face. Well, maybe a man would too, but I've been like seeing this about women. And I'll give you an example of a famous woman who is Linda Ronstadt. And she was really big in the 70s. So if you're younger, you might not know her, but some young people are really getting involved in older music, so they would definitely know her. And she had a very round face. It's not just, it has nothing to do with her weight, which has fluctuated over the years. It's just that's just the way it's a moon face. And there are some women, Selena Gomez is another Cancer sun. These are sun signs. I don't know what their rising signs are. The reason I'm bringing this up is because it can happen even with the sun sign. So I don't know any famous people with Cancer rising, so it's hard for me to talk about that. But that's kind of giving you this idea. And also there can be a tendency to retain water. Cancer is a water sign. So the person may be someone who from day to day, their weight shifts a bit. And another person looking at them might think that they just gained or lost a significant amount of weight within a short time. And when I say significant, enough to change their appearance, I don't mean like a lot of weight, but something that can alter their appearance. So that's kind of like an interesting thing. Now, obviously for a woman, that might be, because men it's I don't think is as big of a deal. But for women, this issue of like, how do I look, that can, plague somebody and maybe make them feel a bit self-conscious, because I would definitely say that Cancer rising is going to mean that a person, and this could be male or female, can be quite hypersensitive towards maybe how people are viewing them. Now, this is an interesting thing because this might be more prevalent when you are younger than later on, because as you grow into your sun sign, as I believe you do, if you are really being mindful of using life as a growth opportunity, then you will tend to become more rebellious about, societal expectations or norms, and you won't care, what is acceptable or not. That's not going to be your main concern. So that's how I think that might go. It might also be when you're younger that you are more retiring, meaning shy. And even though I think Aquarius can be very social, Aquarius is not very like warm necessarily. I'm talking about the influence itself. People who are Aquarians, there might be other influences in their chart that make them warmer than you would expect. So also look at your moon sign, because that's your emotional nature. One of the biggest things that can cause a split within yourself can be the need for freedom and having a strong bond with your family. But I actually think that when somebody has a hard angle, or in this case, something that is an awkward angle, that they may not have fit into their family of origin very well. And normally, I actually think that it doesn't become such a big deal, especially as you get older, because your sun sign Aquarius can be quite detached from that kind of need to fit into any kind of group dynamic like that. But especially, it's funny because Aquarius rules the house of groups, and yet Aquarius doesn't want to be kind of part of what other people are part of. So it's one of those contrarian aspects of Aquarius that's so funny. But even like having a family, that might feel rather confining to you, especially as you get older. But as a child, it may have been more important for you. I feel like what I feel with this combination is that you can come across as very caring and sensitive, and people make the assumption that that's how you really are. And yes, of course, if your moon is in a water sign, and if you have inner planets, since your sun sign is Aquarius, you may have inner planets in Pisces. The moon can be any sign. So if that's the case, then you will actually be more sensitive. But if you have, let's say your moon sign is in air, like Gemini, Libra, or even Aquarius, then you're really going to give a false advertising. Your rising sign is not the true self. So that can be something that surprises other people, is how detached you really are. Sometimes, and the meaning that you're not as emotional as you seem to be. That's just on the surface. And sometimes this is going to be problematic if you're trying to put across a certain image, because you may seem totally contradictory and people get to know you better. The rising sign is just more of the first impressions that you make, as well as how you behave around other people. Oh, another thing that I would say that both of these signs have in common is intuitive gifts. Cancer through the water element, as well as being ruled by the moon, and Aquarius through the Uranian influence of kind of that, I was going to say the mad scientist, but that's more of the inventor, the mind of the inventor. It's more of the lightning, the lightning bolt is a symbol of Aquarius. I think that's what those jagged, those zigzags are supposed to be lightning bolts, which I did not know. But if I'm incorrect about that, you can let me know. But I think that's what it means. And it's kind of those things that happen that are intuitive hits. And Aquarius is known for that. But since you have Cancer on the ascendant, your ruler, you could say both of these planets are your ruler, Uranus and the moon, but the moon is a ruler of the chart. So that will definitely affect the way that you look, the way that you act, and how other people perceive you. So you may be somebody who has, I was going to say unpredictable moods, but it goes beyond that. You may be changeable in a lot of ways, where there's an unpredictable influence of Uranus to your sun sign, and then with your rising sign being ruled by the moon, it can be like on an emotional level that you fluctuate. The moon represents fluctuation in astrology, so your moods can fluctuate. And even with the sun in Aquarius, there can be times that you're unpredictable. So this combination can be unpredictable, and it might be that other people sometimes have a hard time getting a handle on you altogether. So you might want to look at that and see if that's true for you, and to see if there's anything that you can do to become more consistent, because it can lead to other people not understanding you, and that can be frustrating for you. Maybe not, your core self. Who knows? As an Aquarian, there's like this contrarian vibe, and maybe you enjoy other people not understanding you because it makes you inscrutable. But you can consider your sun's ruler your ruler as well. So the two rulers of Aquarius are Uranus and actually Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn. And I don't talk much about Saturn in connection with Aquarius, because I really feel that the Uranian influence is much more front and center, and what we should be focusing on. So anyway, as a sun in Aquarius, you're somebody who believes that you believe in equality, to say the least. There's not thinking about your opposite sign, Leo. Sometimes with Leo, there can be a certain snobbishness. And it's not because Leo people are haters or anything like that. It's because Leo wants to be part of the A-list. And so that pecking order, and it's interesting too, because Leo and Capricorn form an in conjunction. And one thing I see that is true between those two signs is that kind of, concern about status, like where a person is in the pecking order of things. And this is not true at all of Aquarius. There's a great chance, being a sun in Aquarius, that you have friends in your life that come from different social circles, and that you enjoy that aspect. If you have friends that are, let's say, in an affluent, maybe you grew up in an affluent community, and so you have friends from that part of life. And then maybe you teach at a school in the inner city where most of the students are low income, and you mingle with educators and other staff that come from different walks of life. You can easily fit into these different environments. Actually, you may be disdainful of people who you consider elitist, who are, affluent, and they want to kind of remain separate from other people. You may think that that is, wrong in some way. So we could say that it is egalitarianism, and that is one of the qualities. That's probably one of your best qualities, along with being very unique. I know that saying very unique is redundant, but what can I say? And also being highly intelligent. You may have a tendency to be stubborn about certain things, even though you're supposed to be unpredictable. There is a predictability factor within yourself. Any fixed sign will tend to do the same thing over and over again. Maybe not everything that they do, but a lot of things. So it may be that when you're younger, you're more emotionally dependent. And then if it's a certain event or just over time, you come into your own, and you really learn how to detach your emotions better than you did when you were younger. One thing, like going back to this example that I was giving for Cancer rising, about the woman who is, moon-faced, as I was saying, but your dress you might be a woman whose sun is in Aquarius, and you have Cancer rising, who always wears dresses when all of your female peers are wearing jeans. That would be, showing that feminine sign, because Cancer is a feminine sign, but also being rebellious because you're going against the grain in terms of the people around you. Because one of the things about rebellion is it's not always going to look the same way. I think of Aquarius, when I think of the sign of Aquarius, I think of hippies. And when I was in high school in the early 80s, Family Ties, that sitcom, was really popular. And Michael J. Fox, the star of the show, played a teenager who was actually a Republican, being raised by progressive, ex-hippie parents. And that was that was kind of like the situation for the situation comedy. And it was very effective, because this was during an era in the United States when we had Ronald Reagan as a president, and coming from the 70s, which was very hippie-esque, due to the influence of the late 60s seeping into the next decade, which often happens, of course, when you have an influence from a prior decade. So that dynamic, was a gold mine. Now, this could be you. but actually, no, you know what? I take that back, because I don't think that if your rising sign is Cancer, I don't think that you would be coming from a hippie parents. You might be the hippie yourself. Now, I'm using the word hippie. If you're under the age of like 40, you might even think hippie is a dirty word. I heard somebody talking about hippie in a younger person in a derogatory way. And I'm thinking, hippies were cool. What are you talking about? So I think this goes back to me talking about dressing styles, because I always have been fascinated by clothes and fashions. And I could see somebody with this combination, a woman wearing dresses, but kind of like maybe you make your own clothing, or maybe it's kind of like the hippie style that is eternal, will always probably be around, but is more like during the 60s. Like those long peasant dresses, that kind of, because actually I found out that those dresses that they wore during the 60s that were very long, I mean, they were wearing clothing they were actually imitating the Victorian era. But because Cancer rules the fourth house and has to do with domestic things, you might be one of those women who decides that you're going to be a stay-at-home mother when all your female contemporaries are, trying to have these high-powered careers. You might decide to have a homestead, or, and like I said, it could be off the grid, and you might be very good, adept at all these kind of technological hacks to be off the grid or what have you, and just in love of freedom, maybe even politically be a libertarian versus a Democrat or Republican, because after all, those are just uh, those are conventional parties. I mean, it's so mainstream, and that's so lame to an Aquarian anyway. In terms of professions, I usually don't talk about the rising sign, but I do think that it might even have been possible when you were a child that you were kind of taking care of your siblings, having Cancer rising. So you may, if you're not a stay-at-home parent, you might be somebody who's a teacher, because Aquarius is going to be connected to the mind, and Cancer is connected to nurturing. So that could be a big one. I totally could see an energy healer, though. Or, somebody who does astrology, anything intuitive for sure. Romantically, this is difficult because the rising sign, you may attract the rising sign because of your mannerisms and appearance. You may attract water signs. So Cancers, Scorpios, Pisces, or earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, rather than air or fire signs. Look to your moon sign and Venus sign for more information about your attitude towards love and relationships and your emotional output, because that will be very key here because of the nature of Aquarius and the nature of Cancer. They're both so extreme in the polarities that you need to kind of have a tiebreaker to see which one, not a tiebreaker, but to see other influences that would kind of favor one influence versus the other. It may be one of those situations where you want to have a family, but you don't want to be tied down to a typical life, like picket fence, 2.5 kids, Maybe you want to travel in a schoolie, a school bus that's a house that has been built out into a tiny home or something like that, where you can live an alternative lifestyle. Because I think of, like, when I think of the Aquarius, I think of the Deadheads, that followed the Grateful Dead all those years, not just in the 60s, not just in the 70s, but into the 80s. Of course, lead singer Jerry Garcia died in the mid-90s, so that put an end to the group. I mean, with the whole group intact. I don't really know much about the Grateful Dead, because I think Pigpen might have kicked the bucket at some point. But anyway, you know what I mean. So in terms of other types of careers, it is possible that some of you may be interested in anything creative, because being ruled by the moon is connected with creativity. If you factor in your sun sign, which you should, when you're doing astrology at all times, it might even be experimental types of art. Look to your Venus. Venus can indicate your artistic sensibilities as well. So anyway, that's what I have for you. I hope that if you have this combination, that you found something that resonated with you. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.